Yeah.
Dan?
So even though we're here, there's still going to be music at Preservation Hall tonight. So we're busy.
A little bit about your relationship. What's written?
Okay.
About the relationship between the hall and the
Okay,
band.
Jake, we're rolling the speed if you're all set.
I'm going to turn this on. These guys are confusing. So tell us a little bit about the relationship with the Preservation Hall and the band, and how. I don't understand
How it all got started?
Yeah.
Well, my parents were honeymooning actually in New Orleans and happened upon a place. They were in search of New Orleans jazz, both big fans of New Orleans jazz, and we're looking for a place to listen to it and we're having difficulty finding a venue that had just straight New Orleans jazz. And they came upon an old art gallery, and the guy was having a jam session for his friends, and they just went a couple nights and became quite friendly with the gentleman. And after a week or so, he asked them if they were interested in taking over his lease because he was moving on to another business, and they said, well, we'll do it for a year. So now, almost 50 years later, we still have music at Preservation Hall 7 nights a week.
And by the way, nobody's ever going to hear my questions. They're only going to hear your answers, so you got to incorporate a little bit. And have you guys?
Sorry, Steve, we got to stop. They've got too much wind noise in the audio.
Do you want me to stand up into here? Get up here? Or like, is this like?
Bill,
Sure.
what do you want to do to minimize the wind?
Pick your
Where you are is better.
Is it?
But,
Wind is coming this
You want
way.
over there and ask this gentleman to go a little bit. Shotgun's better. Back where you were, right there.
Okay.
Does this kill the lav, Bill? There's too much wind noise on the bar.
Can't do much on the lab. I already have the wind cover on it. I already have the bass roll off.
But you got one on one channel and one on the other.
Correct.
Okay, so might as well leave it because the wind will come and go. So is the band sort of and the hall dedicated to preserving a certain kind of music?
Preservation Hall, a lot of people think the name means that we're preserving New Orleans jazz, and the truth is that I'm not even sure how it got the name. But at the time, it wasn't a concerted effort that we were going to be the saviors of New Orleans jazz. That Preservation Hall was more about preserving the musicians that were still playing New Orleans jazz at the time. A lot of who had retired, a lot of musicians were looking for instruments and didn't even have a venue just to play in where they were welcome to play. And that's how when I think of the name. And of course, we're still playing the style of music, so in some ways we have preserved the music. But when I think of preserves, I think of something that is unchanged and a little stale, and preservationist societies. And if anything, the music is more alive today than it ever has been. And it's a way of life in New Orleans, our music.
Tell us a little bit about that Caledonia too. It's a very lively one. Seems to get everybody involved.
Yeah. Well, the song Caledonia is an old blues. A song that's been in New Orleans for God knows how many years. I mean, it became popular probably sometime in the 40s or 50s, but was around long before that, and is a story about a guy and his girlfriend Caledonia, and it's a dance song, and it's what we call a jump song. It's a boogie woogie, and it has a boogie woogie beat that you can dance to. And New Orleans music has always been dance music, and people say if it's too slow to walk to or too fast to dance to, then it can't be New Orleans jazz.
That's a good line. I like that. And how did it go over here today with this Newport audience?
We never know. The Newport audience is here to hear usually more traditional. The Newport audience are usually here to hear more modern jazz, and usually the bands that are here are modern bands from around the country. But it was great to feel so well received from the audience, and it's great when you play a song like Caledonia because everybody knows the song, and people are up dancing and singing along with it and clapping their hands. So it's always wonderful to see people in their 80s all the way down to kids appreciating what you do.
You have a lot of members of the Preservation Hall ensemble, and how do you determine who goes on the road for which shows, or who gets to touring, or how does that process come about?
The Preservation Hall bands have gone through several different evolutions over the years, and the members of the band are usually people who have come up as underneath other musicians in New Orleans. Our trumpet player His father was a great New Orleans trumpet player and was around music his whole life. And our trombone player, Lucien Barberin, is from one of the great New Orleans jazz families. His uncle used to play with Louis Armstrong. And all of us have a story about our families and how we're involved in music. And it's not, there's never a decision made. It's always sort of who's next in line to be in the band is how it evolves. I mean, one of the musicians says, they've asked him, well, how did you know when you were in the band? He said, well, no one ever told me to go home.
That's good. I like that. How about the banjo player? What can you tell us about him?
Our banjo player, Don Vappy, is one of the most talented banjo players in the world. I mean, the banjo is just not an instrument that you hear that much of anymore, and a great vocalist and a great entertainer, and is a real valuable asset to the heritage of New Orleans music, being able to carrying on a tradition that is slowly disappearing.
And the clarinet is something that you don't hear a lot of in current arrangements.
You don't hear the clarinet in music too often anymore. Maybe klezmer music and in symphonic music, but in New Orleans music, it's still a popular instrument. It's a very popular instrument in New Orleans because it has a very specific role and a very large role in the jazz ensemble. And Dr. Michael White is, of course, one of the great clarinet players.
And what's up next for you?
Well, the band is continuing to tour. We have a few more dates, and then later this week I'm getting married. So I'm actually heading off to North Dakota in a couple days, and the band is going to be following me, and looking forward to them. I think I'm looking forward to the giggle I will get seeing them up on horses, riding through the Badlands of North Dakota, and I'll be sure to get you a picture of that because I'm sure the world will definitely get a giggle from that.
We will. New Orleans is known for food. Of course.
Sure.
How's the seafood in Newport compare with the cuisine of?
I don't like to compare the New Orleans cuisine to any other cuisine because it is unfair. We have, I mean, New Orleans has been around for so long. We have an advantage over everybody else, but it's every city has its own flavor and its own taste, and we find good food in every city that we go to. The only thing that I'll tell you that the band doesn't like is to go to New Orleans restaurants in other cities. I mean, the last thing you want to do is go to New Orleans and have Boston clam chowder. You go to New Orleans to have gumbo, and you go to Boston to have clam chowder, and you come to Newport to have a good time.
Well, we're glad you came and appreciate it. And anything else you want to add? Anything particular that you guys like to talk about with New Orleans or jazz or message that you like to get out?
First of all, the band is just happy to be here at Newport at a festival that really got it all started and is known around the world as being the birthplace of festivals. And it's an honor to be here and to see it. I haven't been here since I was a little kid, so it's just amazing to be on the same stage that my dad was on and that Louis Armstrong's been on and Duke Ellington's been on. I mean, you grew up listening to recordings that were done here, and you look out there and you're seeing the same thing that these guys saw over the past years, and it's a really warm and touching feeling.
That's great. That was an excellent thing to say. That's it, guys. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate your
No
help.
problem.
Okay.
Give me a second and I'll get you in.
Sure.